I think the Lightning missed maybe its super golden window of opportunity. And with any new product, there is that window of opportunity, and you either hit it when it's hot or you miss it, and then you're sort of chasing demand that was there and is now somewhere else.
Hello everyone, and welcome to Silicon Insider, the only uncensored look at life and business in Silicon Valley and the tech world. Our host is veteran journalist and author Mike Malone. He's here with special contributor Scott Budman of NBC Bay Area. The producer is Jordan Henderson. The Silicon Insider is sponsored by Santa Clara University, located in the heart of Silicon Valley. Established in 1851, Santa Clara University is the oldest operating institution of higher learning in California. It counts among its alumni many of today's leading Silicon Valley engineers, lawyers, and executives. You can learn more about Santa Clara University at www.scu.edu.
So, hey, Scott, long time no see.
Well, hello. Good to see you as well.
We had Thanksgiving, and before that, we had technical problems. So it's been a couple of weeks now. Anyway, I want to start with the breaking news, then I want to cast back a little bit. So right off, yesterday, Tesla finally it announced a delivery event, quote unquote, of its Cybertruck, because it introduced the truck 2 years ago. And now apparently they're finally delivering it. It was an event held in at Tesla's Gigafactory in Austin, right? So you watching it on live feed?
Yeah, and boy, I think we actually saw the Cybertruck in 2019 in November. So I believe we're going back 4 years when we first saw it, and the windows were famously broken and everything in the demo. And now they are rolling off the line officially. The first, it looked like about 10 or a dozen were given the, the virtual keys, and they got to drive off in their Cybertruck after shaking hands with Elon Musk there in Texas. And, being here in Silicon Valley, we've seen a few out in the wild lately where, I think they're the test ones, and now it will be a very
my oldest son saw one on El Camino on Monday.
Yeah, it's we're starting to see them, and I think it's going to take a while before they really take over. But apparently there are a lot of orders and a lot of people waiting for them, and so it just is one of those things, like with every new vehicle, especially a new EV, where they seem to take some time to get out there in the wild, but eventually we'll start to see these rolling around.
Okay, well, let me ask, I have some very specific questions. One that was interesting to me, they have 1 million reservations already. Is that correct?
That's what Tesla.
That's a lot of trucks.
Yeah, take it with a grain of salt. That's what Tesla claims. And the reservation is not paying, between $60,000 and $100,000 for a car. A reservation is throwing down $100 and saying, I'll wait. But that's much different than buying an actual full vehicle. But yeah, there's excitement around this. I think partly because it's a Tesla, partly because it's an EV. Trucks are big sellers, as you know, firsthand. And then there's this sort of, unusualness, otherness of the Cybertruck that I think has attracted a lot of people as well.
Okay, so let's say all 1 million people decide put down their money. Can Tesla fulfill that order? I'm reading stories that they're having a hard time getting this thing built, and there's a lot of hitches, and it's turning out to be more expensive because of the production time and all of that. Could they fulfill the order of 1 million trucks right now?
No, not right now, not close, and they're admitting that. And to get back to the cost, yes, the cost is going to be more. They had initially said it'll be around 40 to start with. As far as the two models that will be available next year in 2024, it's going to start around 60 or so and go up to 100. There is a base model that, has less of a range, around 250 miles range, that they say will cost around $49.50, but that will be ready till 2025. So the rollout will be gradual. Next year, we'll see the sort of middle model, and that should start around 60, and then the full, what they call the Cyber Beast, that'll be about $100,000. And, again, you don't put the money full down until you get the truck. And so it's going to take a while to roll these things out, and therefore a while to take all that money and put it towards, its bottom line.
Okay, so a lot has changed since they first introduced that truck in the world of EVs. I mean, that it rose greatly afterwards. I mean, it was the hottest thing in the world was electric cars 2 years ago, but now we're starting to see Ford and GM and a lot of companies saying demand isn't there, and they're beginning to end contracts on production, cut back on their investments. Is there still the same market out there for the Cybertruck that there was when, Elon first rolled it out?
It's a great question, and time will tell, because remember, the demand was for people willing to put down $100, and the demand was not for people willing to, shell out $60 to $100. Excuse me, $60 to $100,000. So we'll know if that demand is still there. You're right about the other trucks. I mean, you see a lot of Rivians on the road, even though that's a very expensive truck. The F-150s, they cut back on that. And this is, I think, for Ford, a missed opportunity. The F-150 for years has been the best-selling vehicle, period, in America. The demand was high. They were nowhere near meeting the initial demand. And I think people sort of fell off. They either decided, I'm not going to save for this, or I'll buy a Rivian, or I'll wait for the Cybertruck, or I'll buy a Chevy. There are other EV truck options out there. And so it's surprising that right now, we're not seeing a ton of EV F-150s, because I think Ford missed its window and now is contacting people saying, oh, we got it now. And a lot of them have said, well, I moved on. And so I don't know. I mean, I guess like anything.
I'm not sure I've seen a Lightning in the wild.
I have, but not many. And yet I've seen a lot of Rivians in the wild.
I've seen a lot of Rivians.
Yeah. And I think the Lightning missed maybe its super, super golden window of opportunity. And with any new product, there is that window of opportunity. And you either hit it when it's hot, or you miss it, and then you're sort of chasing demand that was there and is now somewhere else. And I'm afraid that's what Ford is doing. And you add in all the other distractions, big strike, and trying to come back at everything. And I wonder if people aren't, the word of mouth right now is more likely to be your neighbor that owns a Rivian, right, than a Lightning. So, and that's how these EVs seem to spread, is people saying to their neighbors, no, it's okay. I don't run out of juice and end up on the side of the road. I get all the benefits of owning a truck or a sedan or whatever, and I'm not polluting.
I'm still of two minds. I mean, it doesn't seem like the kind of truck that you throw a shotgun and a hog in the back. It seems like it'd be difficult to load and to use and all that. On the other hand, and also obviously the mileage on electric. But you got a high torque engine in that thing. I mean, one of the great appeals of trucks is they got a lot of torque, and This got torque to spare. And I think if it shows up on farms, or if it shows up for just wealthy guys, who are living in Woodside or something that just wants to have a truck.
Right, and it's interesting. I noticed that during the Cybertruck delivery event, where often for a Tesla event, the car is presented as rolling down a road at night, with your family inside tucked in. Oh, and by the way, you don't pollute. The Cybertruck rollout event was like, here we are, just gunning up mountains and pulling and hauling things. So clearly they're going after truck owners. Because Musk over flourishes everything, they had scenes of someone literally pumping bullets into the side of a truck, because really, that's what all truck owners worry about, is someone just stepping right up.
Yeah, but young people, I keep hearing it's bulletproof, isn't it? They love that fact.
I guess. I mean, it is a hard steel body, but really, does it satisfy the truck owner? And there were plenty of scenes of the Cybertruck being loaded and having stuff thrown in the back and going up these hills and everything, I think, to appeal to that truck owner. And that makes sense, because you're right. You got to appeal to your core audience. Even if the audience is looking at this vehicle going, what in the world is this? They've got to know it's got a decent range. Right now, the range looks from about 320 to 340 miles per charge, a ton of torque. They showed that it goes faster acceleration than a Porsche 911, because again, isn't that what every truck owner wants to do? But just to point out, these EVs are fast.
Well, we'll see. The proof will be in the pudding very soon. Now they're going to start delivering and officially delivering in what, January in volume?
Yeah, right. So, I mean, I guess officially it's now, but they're going to be rolling off. I've even seen one or two of those sort of truck holders, car holders driving up the 101 to Tesla headquarters with Cybertrucks on them. So you're starting to see some of the, sort of on the way to delivery trucks as well. And so I think, again, it's going to be gradual, but you'll start to see them out in the wild. And now the question is, will those people who are willing to put down $100 be willing to put down, 60, 70, 80, 100,000 to get these Cybertrucks?
Okay, well, Elon basically sucked all of the oxygen out of the news this week on various stories. I'll get to him in a minute. But first, I want to kind of debrief you. Since we weren't around last week, you spent the week before that at the summit in San Francisco and down at Filoli, the Asian Economic Conference Summit, where the President of the United States met with the head of the Communist Party in China. What was that like? They cleaned the streets. They gotten all the homeless. I don't know where they hid them, in a hangar somewhere out on the Pier 19 or something. But they cleaned up the streets. You had all these national leaders showing up. And what was it like for you?
It was San Francisco that I hadn't seen before, and I'm from here. The streets were much cleaner. You're right. A lot of the homeless were, put into, temporary housing, hopefully on the way to full-time housing. San Francisco obviously has a huge problem with that and a huge concern, but the streets were clean. There were no homeless people, but instead tons of Secret Service and SWAT agents. And at every corner, you had massive security presence. The 4-block walk from the NBC building where we were able to park to Moscone Center turned into a 2-mile walk because everything was closed down and fenced off. It was very much like one of those post-apocalyptic movies where the only vehicles you see are police vehicles. And, we did one story just on all the poor restaurants that were behind these fences, and they think, the world is coming to us. This is going to be good for business. But you really couldn't get to these places. But once we got, because we had credentials to the Moscone Center, it was neat. We're sitting in on meetings with Condoleezza Rice talking about the future of AI, Gavin Newsom, the governor of California, talking about climate tech, President Biden addressing the CEO summit, talking about the need for security at the time, talking about chips and talking to the CEOs of startups about how, America is counting on you. And it was really interesting to be in those rooms as these talks were being given and questions were being asked. And again, everywhere protests were happening. We saw protests outside. We even saw one of the Biden speeches interrupted by a protest. That is what we see now here in the Bay Area all the time, whether it's, pro-Xi, anti-Xi in China, or obviously with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict going on. And so you sort of had this almost proto-revisionist 60s kind of things happening where here we were fighting our way literally through protesters to get to these politicians who are talking about the future of the free world and in some cases the not so free world. And it was fascinating.
Okay, so you have a gigantic Twitter and Facebook presence. How much interest was there in this summit in the rest of the world?
It was interesting. There was a lot of interest outside. I got more foreign hits on my Twitter account because of this. And by foreign, other countries, especially in the Asia Pacific region outside of us. And that was interesting. A lot of the people, let's say, that were there for President Xi were protesting him. But a lot of people we saw for the president of Mexico were thrilled that he was part of this. And so you did see a lot of that showing up in the feed. But you have to understand that even during the Asian Pacific Economic Cooperation Conference, Elon Musk was, putting out comments that fueled anti-Semitism. Advertisers were fleeing. And so as I was tweeting that out, that was blowing up. And it was just this crazy time for news. And then at the very end of the week, of course, I am literally a couple of hours away from being in a room where I believe it was Emily Chang, the terrific anchor on Bloomberg, interviewing Sam Altman. A couple hours later, while writing up, the story, we're hearing that Sam Altman is gone, while the public markets are still open on a Friday, which tanked Microsoft stock and sent OpenAI into a week-long absolute, telenovela of a drama. I mean, it was that kind of a week. And it felt
like 16-hour days for you.
Yeah, very much. We had to get there super early because of all the security. And then the day just couldn't wrap up. It was like, even the week couldn't wrap up. It's like, we've gotten through this giant conference. We've gotten through the Twitter ad thing, at least phase one. And then Friday afternoon, we get the Sam Altman OpenAI news. And, you've got this buzz in the media room that's literally international, because there are international press members from all over who are all of a sudden looking at me like, wait a minute, OpenAI San Francisco, that's right here. Tell me about this company. And so it became a fascinating exercise in.
You're doing feeds at 6 and 11 on your station. Are you
and
also
there's
getting
signs that the
interviewed by
UAW now is going to
reporters
turn
from
its
other parts of the
attention
world?
from the big three
Well, a little bit, yeah.
and target Tesla.
Which usually
Do
only
you hear any
happens
rumors on that
during
or
Apple
stories?
events,
I mean, it seems logical
where,
that
I've gotten to
with
know
those
the
huge
reporters who
victories they
say
got
China
with
and Israel
Ford and General Motors and all that, why
I
wouldn't
assume,
they
of course, they're
go
translating
after Tesla?
Well, they absolutely are. Remember,
yeah,
the big three,
it was interesting to talk
according
to
to
these
the
people, and all
organizer
of a
fine,
sudden,
is now the big five or
we've
six,
gone
and
from
that
this
includes
international event to
Tesla.
kind of a home
And,
team
I
advantage
mean,
that we have.
goodness,
because
you
all
got
of
to
a
hand
sudden
it
AI
to,
became a story.
labor.
And
I mean,
so,
the unions have chalked up the W's
thought would be
recently
smooth,
from Hollywood
quick Friday
to Detroit
turned into
to
a long
Starbucks.
weekend.
And
just heading
it's
into
interesting
the break,
that
there were all these
the
questions.
end
What's going to
result
happen
for
with
most of
Ford?
these strikes
What's
have
going to happen
been
with Altman?
better
What's going to happen
wages,
with,
and that's good for the
Microsoft
overall
and,
economy.
And you just realize, without going too much into it, where the power lies, and it lies with Satya Nadella, and he is the master of this universe. And I think that is the reason that his stock price is back up. OpenAI is back up for business. I mean, that is the hand that rocks the valley right now.
Okay, and so at one point you go down the peninsula, halfway home to Filoli, and which is for readers, listeners who aren't in Silicon Valley, it's a mansion that's a state park, regional park down the peninsula, and that's for the summit between Biden and Xi. Okay, that must have had a hell of a security lineup covering that thing, keeping you out. You were like pointing at bushes, weren't you, and saying they're meeting in there?
Well, so I was the Moscone Center guy, and we had reporters at Filoli Gardens, which I've been to before. They're lovely to walk around.
You take kids there, yeah.
It's really a very nice, pretty romantic place. But the reporters who were there said the surreal thing was the protesters, from the pro-Xi side and the anti-Xi side, would literally not just yell at each other like we normally see. They exchanged fisticuffs. They were just fighting, just going at it, waving flags and then hitting each other with the flags. It was amazing. And a quick anecdote: I'm at Moscone Center, noticing the Twitter feed of one of the reporters that's down there, and they're literally just watching these people fight at each other. And I say out loud, "Wow, you've got a lot of protests at Filoli Center." There was a reporter from China, a tech reporter from China, sitting across from me, and she says, "Oh, you're at the talking about someone at the Xi event." And I said, "Yeah, there's a lot of protesters." She leans forward and she says, "Did they start fighting?" And I said, "Oh, matter of fact, they did. How did you notice? It happens everywhere he goes, except China, of course. We don't allow that." Right. This protest thing is something, I guess, that happens everywhere he goes, pretty much.
Okay, well, that sounds unique. I was struck by one moment that seemed a little surreal when we had all the Silicon Valley oligarchs sitting at that event, and Chairman Xi walks in and he gets a big ovation. And I thought, well, that's interesting. I don't quite know what to think of it, especially as most of these guys are trying to get their operations out of China, even as we speak.
I mean, sort of trying to get their operations out of China, but I think they still recognize how much they sell in China. And I think if you sort of tried to read between the lines of what President Biden, Vice President Harris, even Condoleezza Rice was saying is, boy, wouldn't it be nice if we had better relations, not business relations, but, a more friendly relationship with China. And perhaps there were fewer human rights abuses that we had to worry about, because my gosh, we are, as business nations back and forth, really good at selling and buying each other products and chips and phones and cars. And there was almost this wistfulness to APEC of, wouldn't it be nice if the sort of flat earth that Thomas Friedman always writes about was a smoother road, less fraught with concerns that are legitimate concerns, obviously. It would there's just so much business to be done between these nations. And I speak of the whole Asia Pacific region, but for a lot of these political things that keep getting in the way.
Well, the representative from Vietnam must have been grinning, because he's getting all of that business now, moving there. Okay, let's keep. You mentioned several things about Elon. We should get into those. First of all, you mentioned that there's a lot of advertisers suddenly suspended placing their ads on Twitter because Elon made apparently what was perceived as an anti-Semitic comment. Elon then goes on stage at a New York Times event this week and tells those advertisers, including Bob Eisner of Disney, who's sitting in front of him, to go F themselves if they're going to keep doing this, because it'll kill Twitter. How do you even cover that story? You can't even actually say what he said. I'm not even saying, and we're on the internet, I could actually say it if I wanted to. What do you make of that?
I mean, at this point, there is a consistency to what people would call madness. I mean, Musk wants to promote anti-Semitism on Twitter. Let's just put it out there. This is not an accident. He's not stumbling into this. And he even, in the Deal Book Summit said that was an unwise thing to do. Okay, yeah, it was an unwise thing to do, but he did it, and he's done it before. He wants a platform where he can promote anti-Semitism. He wants a platform where he can call people who want to rescue young boys in danger pedo guy. He wants that. He loves it. He thrives on it. If you're an advertiser, come on. If you're Disney's Bob Iger, do you want your ads next to content that's being promoted and celebrated by neo-Nazis? Of course you don't. If you're ABC, if you're the Washington Post, just to name a couple of organizations. No, of course you don't. So that's how the free market works.
Editorializing. If he was just running the operation, that'd be one thing, but he keeps slipping in these editorials.
Right. Well, because it has to be about him. He's not just the owner. Look, the Dallas Mavericks are owned by Mark Cuban. I know that's now up in the air and he's selling it, but I just used it as an example. But it's not Mark Cuban on the court, right? He's the owner, and he says, go hire good players, go be a team. Elon Musk buys Twitter, and instead of saying, go find people that are good selling ads, he brings Linda Yaccarino in, who has a great reputation for selling ads. And then he tells the advertisers, hey, go F yourself. Well, that's not good for business, but it's also not good for business to say, we want your ads next to neo-Nazi content. Nobody wants that. If he doesn't understand that, he has to understand the difference between free speech and hate speech. And yeah, free speech is great, but if you're going to use your right to free speech to promote neo-Nazi ideas, good luck getting advertisers. And that's all I can say. This is no longer a mystery to me. This is Musk self-immolating himself. Twitter, as far as I'm concerned, I've never had more followers. I've never had a bigger audience. It's great for getting the news out, but I totally understand why companies want to pull their advertising. And by the way, pulling your advertising from a site that insists on hate speech is not blackmail. Musk keeps using the term blackmail. That also is something he doesn't quite seem to understand.
Media Matters for precisely that, right?
Well, he's saying Media Matters is making stuff up when they say they have evidence that IBM ads are next to neo-Nazi content, or the Washington Post ads are next to hate speech. And that's something that will be, figured out in court. Do they have the evidence to write these articles? But to say that advertisers are blackmailing him, that's not what advertisers do. They spend money on your site unless there's no reason to spend money on your site. Or in Musk's case, there's a very specific reason not to spend money on your site. That's what he has to start to understand.
I sense a little bit of business hypocrisy and cynicism and all that, because these advertisers are still involved with TikTok. And TikTok, is becoming more anti-Semitic than just about any platform out there. And I know TikTok's trying to start it. They've said they found unbelievable 35 million fake accounts that they've had to stop since the start of the Gaza war. I'll call it the Gaza war, which is up 67%. So why isn't Disney and all that pulling out of TikTok as well? I want to see a concerted effort that supports what they profess to believe. And I wonder why Twitter's getting it and not TikTok. Why not both of them? Because
I think Twitter's getting it more because the owner is promoting this speech, and he insists on that front and center. A lot of what we see on Twitter that's controversial, we wouldn't see unless Elon Musk promoted it.
Yeah.
But that aside, that doesn't excuse TikTok. TikTok is a real problem for the U.S. TikTok, that's for another show, but I'm worried about TikTok and where our young people are going politically because of it. And I don't know that that's because of the ads or sort of the content, the algorithms that are being pushed on our young people, but that's a big discussion to be had. And that was one of the...
We've been calling it an evil swamp for a long time. And I don't think that there's one theory that neither party wants to piss off young people. And if they were to really shut down TikTok, they might lose votes.
Possibly. The young people are resilient. It's not like politicians shut down, say, MySpace. But after MySpace, people found, Facebook, they found Instagram, they found TikTok, they found Twitter. So young people will find whatever is available. But TikTok is gigantic. I'll give you that. And it's just a big issue that really needs to be looked at by legislators who understand what's going on and who understand the technology.
Okay. And finally, back to Elon, but at least to Tesla, there is now a strike going on at Tesla in Sweden. And the UAW apparently is watching it very closely because they're considering now extending those many strikes, those victorious strikes, to Tesla itself. What do you think are the chances of that? And we'll close with that today.
I think the chances are pretty good of them at least putting pressure on Tesla, and I would include Toyota in there. I know that's one of the targets as well. And much like the big three, is now paying more and really, changed that. It shows that labor has power, that these unions have power. And I think that power is going to be flexed in the direction of Tesla and Toyota. And I think it's up to those companies to respond with whatever it takes, whether it's higher wages, better benefits, stock options, whatever it takes to please those employees, because we have seen this surge of union power that I don't remember seeing, dare I say, even in my lifetime. It's been a while.
No, it's a 50s and 40s kind of phenomenon right now.
Yeah, and I speak not only of the auto industry, but of Hollywood as well. Starbucks is unionizing. It's fairly impressive to see just how much power these guys are wielding, and if higher wages and better benefits come from it, that's what we should have. So I wouldn't be surprised if the power that you say of these successful strikes is now aimed elsewhere. And it's up to these companies to respond, right? Or else they'll have picketers.
And Elon, once again, has put it out there. He said, if we get unionized, it's because we deserve it. Okay.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for now, folks. You can find us on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Have a great weekend. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.